the genocide against the Libyan people. I have no idea, but it just started a few hours ago. I hope that the information I get is not accurate, but if it is right, it will be a real genocide.
How many people? How many people?
About أعتقد أن ما قامت به الجامعة العربية اليوم هو الإجراء الصحيح من الناحية العملية. لقد أكدت عدم شرعية النظام في الوقت الحالي. إن تعليق مشاركة ليبيا في اجتماعات الجامعة يعني عدم شرعية الحكومة القائمة في ليبيا.
ممثل نظام جديد في ليبيا؟
ما زلت أمثل الشعب الليبي وسأستمر في تمثيل الشعب الليبي.
That was the deputy Libyan ambassador to the UN speaking there. Let's cross straight to Washington and to Al Jazeera's Nick Clark. Nick.
Yeah, Darian, interesting that, isn't it? Ibrahim Dabashi speaking there, stark contrast to the Libyan spokesman, government spokesman that we heard a little bit earlier, who was speaking in very clear terms, in totally the opposite direction. Let's bring in Scott Heidler, who's at the UN in New York. Scott, what have you been hearing there?
Well, Nick, we know that the emergency session for the Security Council has adjourned for the day without any kind of statement coming out. We heard word that there was that they had a second draft of this press statement that was to be issued after this meeting today, but they adjourned without any reading of the press statement. So we can conclude that there was still some discrepancy within the 15 members over what was said in that. We have some sources that were in the meeting saying that it was the usual suspects, if you will, that there was some wording over accountability and possible investigations into what happened, and that's where there were some issues with the wording in that statement. That adjourned, and that's how we saw the deputy ambassador from the Libyan mission to the United Nations. He came out and was speaking to the media here. Now, earlier we just heard from Lynn Pascoe. He is essentially he's the UN chief political officer here. He spoke to that same meeting of the Security Council. He expressed very serious concern about the situation in Libya, and he said it could get much worse. So we've got a very dire situation now. The Security Council couldn't even agree on wording, not necessarily actions by the UN, but couldn't even agree on wording today. We'll have to see what happens over the day on Wednesday to see if they can actually come up with a consensus and issue some kind of statement, Nick.
All right, Scott, we'll get on back onto Lynn Pascoe in just a moment, but just those words from Ibrahim Dabashi. He's actually finished speaking now, Libya's deputy ambassador to the United Nations, saying a lot of things there, and I presume that he's been at this second meeting today as well as the first one. And would he have said the same words that we've just been hearing on the television, talking about genocide, the genocide that might have started in Libya? He hoped that he was wrong with his information, but he understands that the genocide has started, as he put it, in Libya right now.
Yeah, we heard similar words to that from him yesterday, and then, as you said, in this first meeting with the Security Council today, there was a bit of a switch between him and the ambassador, the head of the Libyan mission to the United Nations. He took over. His tone was a bit more muted when it came to criticizing Muammar Gaddafi and the situation in Libya. What we're seeing here, and it sounds like our sources are saying in the meeting that the ambassador, the head of mission, was trying to bridge the gap between what the deputy said yesterday and what he was saying this morning. So I'm not sure if in that session, in that Security Council session, what we heard just now from the deputy ambassador was really translated to the Security Council. What we were hearing is that the Security Council was going to listen to what the Libyan mission said, but that they also have other sources, particularly the secretariat members in Libya. They were feeding information to the Security Council as well, so they weren't going just on what the Libyan mission was saying.
Okay, Scott, leave it there for just a moment. I understand we're going to go to the United Nations. We can drop into
humanitarian agencies.
The Brazilian ambassador, I believe, is speaking now.
Called for international humanitarian assistance to the people of Libya and expressed concern at the reports of shortages of medical supplies to treat the wounded. They strongly urged the Libyan authorities to ensure the safe passage of humanitarian and medical supplies and humanitarian workers into the country. The members of the Security Council underlined the need for the government of Libya to respect the freedom of peaceful assembly and of expression, including freedom of the press. They called for the immediate lifting of restrictions on all forms of the media. The members of the Security Council stressed the importance of accountability. They underscored the need to hold to account those responsible for attacks, including by forces under their control, on civilians. The members of the Security Council expressed deep concern about the safety of foreign nationals in Libya. They urged the Libyan authorities and all relevant parties to ensure the safety of all foreign nationals and facilitate the departure of those wishing to leave the country. The members of the Security Council will continue to follow the situation closely.
In which he's basically asking his supporters to attack the other innocent civilians and to commit more crimes against those civilians. What's the reaction to this?
The reaction of the council members is the one that I just read out to you.
Queria comentar em português, por favor, embaixadora, a decisão do Conselho de Segurança e o que isso vai
That's Maria Luisa Ribeiro Viotti. Brazil holds the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council, so that's why she is speaking right now and talking of the concern about the situation in Libya and concern about foreign nationals and what's going to happen to them and how they can be safely evacuated. So all things happening at the UN right now, still no word on how they're going to proceed in terms of any kind of statement from the meetings that we've been having today. It could be that that was it. We'll clear it up and see exactly what the position is. For the time being, let's go back to Doha and Dareen.
Nick, thank you very much. Yes, just listening in there with you to what's going on at the United Nations. We heard from the deputy ambassador to the United Nations from Libya describing what's happening in the country as a genocide. That's what he said. So any information coming out of the UN we'll bring to you, of course. But for now, we can take a look at some other news that's happening. And at least 2 pro-democracy protesters have been killed in Yemen and 20 more have been injured. The attack happened in the capital, Sana'a. It's believed a gang of pro-government supporters opened fire at the demonstrators, and scuffles had broken out earlier in the day as protesters were seen rolling a car over and setting it on fire. In Algeria, the cabinet there has decided to lift the country's state of emergency, which has been in place for nearly 2 decades. Opposition groups have been staging weekly protests in the Algerian capital, Algiers, and they're seeking to quell uprisings in Egypt and neighboring Tunisia. Well, the government hopes its move will appease demonstrators. It's also approved a package of measures aimed at reducing unemployment, which is one of the people's biggest complaints in the country. In New Zealand, the mayor of Christchurch says 300 people are still missing, and that's following a 6.3 magnitude earthquake that struck on Tuesday. At least 75 people have died.